Um, Hi everybody. I I'll open this one with an anecdote. The 2 nights ago, I was told that I looked like a YouTuber, which I thought was funny. It was a funny little coincidence about how well I'd been making these videos on my channel just intermittently whenever I impulsively felt like it, and coupled with the intermittent video through sheer impulse and being told I looked like a YouTuber, I said, well, funnily enough, I have been kind of making YouTube videos. And this person said that it was just because of my appearance, really, but I suppose the intonation I carry as someone who's spent 10 years. I spent 10 years in singing training. I went from youth choirs to solo performances to graduating. I think it was the highest AMEB exam, and then I went to a music college very briefly. But this person, I digress. This will come into play later. Um, this person told me that in looking like a YouTuber, they very much flattered me. And the person standing next to me turned to me and said, well, I'd be interested in seeing your YouTube video. And so I sent them my YouTube video, as I had sent a few other people, and from the people that I showed, I got it was a positive reaction. Everyone had their own interpretations, but this person wrote like 3 paragraphs on how it seemed like I was very well educated, and how, in seeming well educated, a lot of my ideas had a lot to chew on. And so it made me think that because that person resonated with me, who I thank you, her name's Emily, I think, but there's a few other people like Anthony who I have to thank, and even my friend Tish from New Jersey. I digress. It's not. This is not a credit sequence already. Gosh, I feel like I gotta cut this. The way these compliments resonated with me made me realize that I did have value in what they were saying, and in turn had value in this. And I think that there's going to be a lot to sort of unpack, but bear with me through these anecdotes. So I mentioned that for the longest time I did value singing. Singing is something that I'm extremely passionate about, but I had that passion regardless of knowing that it would go somewhere specific. It was something I engaged with for sheer love of the game, sheer enjoyment of doing that. And I was told I was quite good, but really I was just extremely passionate. I would not only do training like nearly every day, I would just sing for myself. And in all of this, I ended up kind of developing theatrical tones of voice, and even the language that I use seems a bit dated, but I've been told my tone is rather melodic for it. And when I was 19, I was in a music course. I was being trained by a professional opera trainer when I was doing singing practice, but the thing I was failing in was I was put through these classes in very dark rooms where they would just lecture theory at us, and unfortunately I still struggle with reading music, and likely it was because I was, for the longest time, unmedicated for ADHD, which is unfortunate, but I've learnt a lot from the experiences that I've had being unmedicated, so it's everything is sort of a learning experience in that regard. But I was struggling doing the work, and I was even struggling making friends. Part of it was not being truly honest with myself, but part of it was not having the courage to talk to other people. And so I was sitting by myself, talking to one of my only friends online, and doodling. And this guy, who is so close with me, he's someone who's been a part of my life for a long time, and I'm very grateful, despite him being in Norway. He is someone who managed to change my life by encouraging me to pursue drawing. And as he taught me a few things, and as I taught myself a lot of things, I realized that I value being an artist. And the people who were encouraging me to engage in more art were reinforcing that belief. And that fundamentally changed my life. It changed my life through experiences to make income, sure, from time to time. But the main thing was that it gave me a sense of identity and value that I felt was truly above everything, that I would draw things for people that I cared about, and in doing so, I would show them that I cared about them as gifts, as everything. When my life was bad, I found it harder to draw. When my life was good, I found it so easy and natural. And it's become such an intrinsic part of me that it became a system of value. The work itself became a system of value. And when I realized I was valuing quantity to a point where it was burning me out, and it took me a while to realize that, one, I have that other video about shame. There was a lot of shame to the way figure study is done is by drawing naked bodies, and my mother once shamed me about that. She said, I see the type of things you draw. And that in turn shamed me about the content of my work, so I instead engaged with the quantity of it, which became a fool's errand, but sort of helped me improve a lot. But the true mentality and what I'm getting at is that it's a system of value. This and my singing and the compliments that resonated with me the other day all tie into my system of value of affecting people, but not just affecting people. It's so primal that you want to connect to others. It's not a manner of teaching them, because I've always felt somewhat repulsed by the idea of being a lecturer or a teacher in some regard. And that's not through any admonishment of people who very nobly engage in teaching students who are eager to learn. And part of that is Australia exports a lot of education, and for it, if you have any sort of hiccups in your learning pathway, they won't let you into a lot of better universities. And because the ones that I was looking at were kind of considered inferior, and I didn't really have a direct method of going from year 12 to university, and not even a clear path of what I wanted to engage with, I didn't end up going, and I still haven't gone to any sort of tertiary education. So forgive me if my ideas seem a little disjointed in places, or I don't... It's funny that not going into tertiary education has sort of impacted me as a head of the Leviathan. Because capital and education here are so interlinked, the head of the Leviathan that sought to punish me for not engaging in that system or truly just living with my own values, punished me by creating, well, the death of the third space means that I'm somewhat isolated. But it's given me a lot of time to think about a lot of things which people say comes across in the way I speak, which I think is very flattering. But it's truly because I'm afforded this time to think about things. I'm afforded this time to consider and talk about things, and even my values from a very young age. My dad wanted to travel the world and wanted to show me things around the world, and it made me value worldliness. Part of the reason why I read classic literature from time to time is because I value the experiences, I value the text, I value the cultural impact it's had, and I value worldliness, and this is a part of my values. In psychology, there are often times, if you're feeling distressed, you need to recount your values. And when thinking about these values, what made me somewhat dawn on these systems of value is that I have a Romanian friend who I talk to. He was talking about losing his job, and after a week of being out of a job, he started getting very stressed out, very feeling like the weight of the world was coming down on him, and really panicking. And I said, what you're experiencing is your self-worth being tied to capital gain. And when your self-worth is tied to capital gain like that, the idea of a midlife crisis, again, is a show of wealth. Most people, when they have a midlife crisis, they'll do something exorbitant. They'll buy a house, they'll buy an expensive car, they'll go on trips around the world. They're showing that the inherent value that they've made through grinding their life to dust under the wheels of the machine is that by making these shows of worth, they've showed that they're living. It's proof of their own life. That's what a midlife crisis even is, and that's why it's not inherently tied to a specific age. It's people who start engaging in a self-identification of realizing what their values are and realizing that the system sort of encourages people's only value to be capital. And then every single time I mentioned this, he would throw the system's boogeymen at me. He would say that, oh, you're a communist, even though I've never really read any communist theory at all. I've read Crime and Punishment, but I've not engaged in anything really. He started saying that he started using the trauma that the system inflicts on him, whether it's through grinding his life to dust in the corporate machine, or whether it's through family trauma or historical trauma with communism or any of these other systems boogeymen. It was him. It was coming across as an attack because I was attacking a value that he had by simply trying to show him the other way. And he said, I wish I could see things like you, but I can't. The two things that sort of led into was that me realizing that when you engage with someone and you know that you're right and they are deflecting with these ideas of feeling attacked and entrenching themselves in some manner of debate, even though there wasn't really anything I sought to debate him on, it got to a point where I was telling him that he needs to realize that he has values other than capital. And he does, he just doesn't acknowledge them. And part of that lack of acknowledgement is through lack of self-identification that the system encourages in order to keep people engaged in the system, truly. And so the lack of discussion of values there made me realize that all of these things that entrench people in these grand debates were always done in front of an audience traditionally, because it's not the debater that is to be swayed, it's the people that watch. And when thinking about systems of value like that, the reason why debaters get so heated is because they feel attacked. And part of the reason is because if they start questioning their values and they realize that they don't actually truly only value capital that is causing them to spend all their time engaging in capital and making money, they'll realize that they've wasted so much time. So it's part of it is sunk cost fallacy. But another part of it is it's hard. It's hard to re-engage with your life with a new perspective on values. And it might make you have to change things. And that's hard. And people don't want to have extra burden. The other thing that clicked for my friend in Romania was that what kicked him out of a funk was engaging with his mother. He was showing her videos of rabbits and screenshots from the new Hollow Knight game. And that kicked him out of a funk. And I said, that's because you're engaging in a value other than capital. And this also ties into something that I was using as a tool to try and convince him. I said, he tried to get me with this gotcha and said that you're only allowed to come to these ideas through your worldly experiences, through travel, through the fact that you've been able to afford a place through the machine and through capital. Someone pays for it all. It's all paid for. And I said, why? Why, when I was very young, did I get paid to go internationally? Why was I taken on trips with my family? Why was I given a place to stay and food to eat and all of these things? Why was I encouraged to engage in literature or anything? All of these things that are valuable to me. It's love. Love as a system above capital as a value was a tool that I was using to try and convince him, and he was refusing to accept it. And then it happened to him. It literally happened when he talked to his mother, which I thought was very sweet, but I also was like, I told you so. But all of these things, the systems of value that we might have, it makes me realize that what I seek to be is an artist. But from a very, very young age, I always would try and provoke people, and I didn't really know why I got such a kick out of it. And it was because if I was provoking people through humor, or later through song, or later through things that I drew, or now through these videos, it's not that I've always been an artist. It's that I've always had these values of reaching people, as everyone kind of does. It gets... In realizing all of this, all of these things that I think ought to be free for everyone to experience often aren't. When you look at, well, things like international travel, I think that was a core part of what I really, really, really learnt. Even as recently as when I went to the United States, wow, it's so funny the way that some of the stereotypes are really real and not as exacerbated as you might expect. But the United States is an amusement park for the automotive industry and high fructose corn syrup, which is so heavily subsidized by the government, it keeps people from questioning. And there's very active questioning and always being curious and always wanting to reach people and always wanting to think things through. Always thinking that because I was always considered smart, that I could think through every problem. That value made me be considered educated amongst people, even though I didn't engage in buying education. And when you realize that there are values in life other than capital, and when you start pushing back on these ideas that, or even trying to teach people, you get this confederacy of dunces that sort of rise against you purely out of their own shame or their own logical fallacies. And it's why I sort of resent being told to be mindful, because I'm always sort of mindful. And because I'm mindful, I like living in the present moment, it's when I'm engaged in these people saying that I'm not being mindful, it's exactly the opposite. It's because my immediate world is full of these people so entrenched in capital and in systems of value that they don't truly believe in, that they've never thought about, that I ought to enlighten them. And it was just really interesting how when I was talking to my Romanian friend and he was so cyclically arguing, I started using descriptions like, there are necromancers that pilot this leviathan that can use capital to afford atrocity from the bottom to the top. The atrocities of genocide or the atrocities of exploiting children and women and everything. Or these systems of value that are tied to people with no self-worth will engage in systems of value tied to tradition or tied to the way things were. I think this is a core part of nostalgia culture, is that nostalgia culture is always about the veneration of childhood, purely because when you're a kid, capital is so abstract. You don't have to pay for tax, you don't even have to pay for food. And because everything is abstracted that way, it's not that you yearn for a time where there was less internet, less people to connect to, a smaller world, more of a routine with school. It's none of those things. You crave a time when capitalism, or the current system that stands, that seeks to push down on you and your values, it was so abstracted and not really relevant to you. And this sort of applies to everybody. And even if I don't truly, sometimes I might be a bit haphazard with my points. I don't really find value in writing a script. Sorry, these videos are going to be only moderately edited, because I have a value in showing the humanity in these things. Everyone can come to these conclusions that I have. Every single person on this earth. And intelligence as a value is only the product of things that we consider capital. The reason why people can look at PewDiePie and say he must be a savant. He must be a savant for being able to learn to do all these things, despite the fact that he has so much money and time that he can just afford to do all these things. Everyone could be like that. Every single person. But there are these giants called corporations and this leviathan of society that all of these things, these gears, they work in lockstep to create this grand sort of conspiracy that is like this evil that casts a shadow over the land. And I could talk more about the mimetic deconstruction of a lot of these ideas, which I have been talking about a lot to another friend, but it would kind of go against the main topic, which is values. That debate Adam Friedland had with Richie Torres, and Richie Torres kept saying that my people couldn't get the food on their table that they needed to survive. How can I afford to care about a genocide? And also said that billions of dollars isn't much in the grand scheme of things. And Adam said, how can you not have a heart like this? It's because Richie does have a heart to some degree. He knows that he needs to campaign to make things more available for his people. But that availability, that scarcity, is how the system rears its head and attacks the people who would seek to make real change or have values other than capital, like human life itself. It's the system causing us to butt heads in this pendulum issue of all sorts of things, when in reality it's a matter of capital. It's also why the people at the top seek to extend their life forever and not plant trees in the shade of which young people can grow in, and they think that it's just a matter of money until they can live forever. It's not true, and it's because they've spent their whole lives engaging in capital. It entrenches them in this idea that they need to live longer to make more capital because that's valuable, when it's not. This number that's entirely made up is going to kill the planet if we don't really rethink our values as people. And if you call me a communist or a socialist, I haven't really engaged in that much reading material, which is what I said when that person at the beginning called me very intelligent and well educated and I must be well read. It's not. It's that I have values other than capital, and because of that, I seek to engage my brain and think about things. And in reading culture and having worldly experience and things that I value, I've come to conclusions that anyone could come to. It's why a lot of people who've had similar ideas in the past, they've realized the extent of the evil of the machine. They've come from all different backgrounds, really, kind of, and given no background, the only thing that can really be said is that they just oppose the authoritarian structure of everything, or that the people who are complacent and letting evil win by doing nothing and wanting to choose comfort over engaging in hard-to-think thoughts. When you think about things like that, it's why one of the main things about the label of oppositional defiant disorder or autism or anything, all of these mental disorders that conveniently one of the main symptoms seem to be going against social structure, is they seek to lock people away or recondition them into believing the system. Or, I can even relate this back to Don Quixote, because he valued the light of chivalry above other things. It was seen what he was doing was bad, when in reality he enlightened a lot of benighted sinners. And it's just interesting to think about. It's interesting to think about the romantic ideas of some of these things actually did implicitly teach people about having values other than capital. And now that I have the opportunity to explicitly teach these things to people that I've implicitly learnt through engaging in this world and engaging in culture, and having a value to show this humanity of myself, to not appear the most well-dressed or to not have incredibly high production values. Here I am in my apartment that costs more than it should. My apartment costs more than welfare would provide for a person seeking a job. And isn't that incredibly insane that one person can't afford to even have the right to exist in a city they grew up in? That's how gentrification pushes people out of homes, and then how the system itself pushes those homeless people outside of the city. I saw this in California. When I was in California, I was around Oakland. I saw so many homeless camps, and after I left, they cleared those homeless camps out. And when I was talking to people, they said all those homeless, they're locals. And it's the ugly truth is that when you tell people about this, it forces them to rethink their values of capital, and they're told not to care about human life and to stay in their own lane because, frankly, the belief in the self-preservation is one of the tricks that they use to get you to engage in the system. And because I love life and I didn't crumble under the weight of the machine, and I did discover myself in a truer regard, that I didn't choose to take my own life or to suffer. And because I am now engaging in this, all of these things, they link together, and seeing that link, some people could say is schizophrenic delusions of reference, but it's not. It's just because I think about things, and unfortunately, if there's enough lack of education through, let's say, mass AI to the point where even professionals in the field are all unanimous in saying that's me for making this video, it's some sort of deranged schizophrenic, imparting dangerous ideas onto people, and I ought to be locked up. That's a confederacy of dunces rearing its head because I seek to oppose a system that exists as a force far greater than them, as a mimetic idea that is unconscionably evil. And that's why I think I'm going to make my next video on deconstructioning things with mimetic ideas. Deconstructioning things? I mean, deconstruction and the mimetic idea. I'll call it something like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment. I actually do like reading comments. I've got one that says like, you should just make art. But the thing is that I can't convey all these ideas into one art piece, or if I thought to create a novel of it all, I don't know what I would do. And in fact, people have tried. I keep saying Confederacy of Dunces. I haven't read that book. I mention it because it contained a lot of similar ideas, surprisingly, and the author had an unfortunate end because it refused to be published by the Machine of Capital. And then after his death, it received awards for being, well, the Leviathan has ways of affecting us all, and I ought to slay the Leviathan by reaching people with my art. And that's the meaning of life. Well, life doesn't have a meaning. It's because I value this life that I have, because I have to, that I've sought to think about things like this. And you know, if I seem silly to you, it's probably because you haven't thought about it as much as I have. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm gonna have to cut this down.